We have lots to cover in today's video, including the latest offseason trade talk. Tonight, we're talking about teams like the Golden Knights and if they need to move out money with a chance to sign Jonathan Marchessault and what's the latest on his contract extension talks. Plus, we also have the latest when it comes to the Trevor Zegras situation with the Anaheim Ducks. How likely is it that Zegras gets moved? Plus, we have some more updates as well from the Vancouver media looking at the potential of trading high on Brock Boeser. Is that something they should consider or not? We'll take a look at that situation. Plus, it's a big night in the NHL. We have Game 6 between the Rangers and Panthers, with the Florida Panthers having the opportunity to punch their ticket to the second straight Stanley Cup final. Plus, we'll recap what happened last time between the Edmonton Oilers and the Dallas Stars, and a few other notes around the league, mostly involving some more items around coaching situations. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to cover here today. As I mentioned, it's a big night in the NHL. We'll start with the Stanley Cup playoffs. Of course, like I said, it's game number 6 tonight between Florida and the New York Rangers. The Panthers have a 3-2 series lead and are trying to close it out and punch their ticket to their second consecutive Stanley Cup final. Obviously, it doesn't look like Florida's going to have any changes tonight. They're going to have the same lineup they've had the past few games. Looking like the Rangers might make a few changes. It's believed that Matt Rempe will not be in the lineup tonight. Looks like Brodzinski is going in. I know Wheeler's not going to be in tonight either. It looks like they're changing up some of their lines in their second power play unit too. So we'll see if the changes make good or not. To be honest, going into this game, I don't have a lot of confidence in the way the Rangers have played. Time will tell. Maybe they pull one out. Maybe Igor Shesterkin steals one. But this series has been tipping towards the Panthers the last few games. Now, here's another tidbit of information as well, especially something that Florida fans will find intriguing in case you don't know this. But on this day, June 1st, 1996, so exactly on the same day, 96, the Panthers won the Eastern Conference in a Game 7 battle against the Pittsburgh Penguins. So can they win another June 1st playoff matchup to punch their ticket to the Stanley Cup final? Now, of course, the game-winning goal in that game, Game 7 against the Penguins, was scored by now New Jersey general manager Tom Fitzgerald. Last year was a different date, but last year when the Panthers won their game to go to the Stanley Cup final, who scored the winning goal? Matthew Tkachuk, and of course they are cousins. So a long number of years in between, but the Panthers have had 2 opportunities to clinch the Eastern Conference in their franchise's history, and they've won it both times. So they're 2-0 in Eastern Conference clinching scenarios, and it's 2 cousins that have scored the game-winning goal. So can we see them go 3-0 in that scenario and punch their ticket to the second straight Stanley Cup final? We'll see how things go tonight, but things have been looking good for them here so far. The Oilers took a 3-2 series lead last night against the Dallas Stars. I must say, Dallas had a very uninspiring effort last night. They completely laid an egg, in my opinion. They only had 10 shots on net after the second period of play. They had as many in the third as they had in the first 2 combined. It's a little bit better, but the effort just seemed low. I was starting to question if they really just run out of gas. I'm not sure what to make of the Dallas team. They do have a good mix of older players and younger players, and it's mostly been the younger players that have been kind of showing up here, Wyatt Johnson being the main one. Stankoven's looked pretty good as well. Pavelski has had his share of struggles and hasn't been overly productive, even though the effort's there. So Edmonton certainly had a couple of good power play goals last night. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins was on a tear. They took more advantage of their opportunities. It wasn't a high-scoring affair, but the Oilers did have, I think, 10 or 12 more shots than Dallas. Certainly had more energy and took control of the game. And once they did, Dallas just kind of didn't have much pushback. It was kind of disappointing for them, considering what was at stake. But they will go back to Edmonton for Game 6 tomorrow with a chance to punch their ticket to the Stanley Cup final. So we'll see how things go on that front. A few other quick notes around the league before we get into some of the rumors. The St. Louis Blues today announced they've signed one of their prospects, and it's from the 2023 NHL draft. He's a 4th-round pick out of Czechia, Jakob Stancil. He gets his 3-year entry-level contract. A couple of coaching updates as well. The Nashville Predators are reportedly parting ways with assistant coach Dan Heinold. His contract was up and will not be renewed. He most recently was spending time looking after their penalty kill had been with them for about 4 years. So he's not going to be returning. So far from what we've seen and heard, looks like Todd Richards and Derek McKenzie, their other two assistant coaches, will be coming back. And of course, we know yesterday we heard that Minnesota had parted ways with longtime assistant coach Darby Hendrickson. Now there's speculation today that his replacement might turn out to be former Islanders head coach and former Sens associate coach Jack Capuano. Capuano, as of today, technically is still employed by the Senators unless they've given him permission to speak with other teams. But it is known that his contract, which technically expires here at the end of June, will not be renewed. So in theory, he is a free agent out there. So, Capuano, of course, has been with them for some time. Was brought in originally, I think, with DJ Smith. He did, I think, interviewed for the head coaching job. Didn't get the role, but ended up being brought on as an assistant and then became the associate coach. Been there quite some time. So I think for Sens, it seems like they're going with a whole new staff here, with the possibility of maybe the goalie coach and Daniel Alfredson, who's just made the return late last year. So we'll see, but that's the update there out of Minnesota. On the trade front, some names we want to talk about, some interesting names. Of course, earlier today I put out a video talking about a Mitch Marner to Vegas trade. There's some talk from Dennis Bernstein of the fourthperiod.com with his prediction on a recent radio hit that he did on Sportsnet Radio, which also is a podcast, which is normally how I listen to it, the big show with Richards and Rose. And he was talking about how he feels Marner's most likely going to Vegas. And then one of the main pieces going back to would be Shea Theodore. Now, regardless if Shea Theodore is involved in a trade with the Leafs regarding Marner or not, I do think the odds of him being traded are pretty good. And I also think goaltender Adin Hill joins him in that category. Now, Logan Thompson could be the one to go, but I think Vegas will move a goalie. They're going to have lots of interest. There's no doubt about that. But I just think from a cap perspective, if they're looking to save money to do other things, if they have confidence in Thompson, then I think that Hill will be the one to go because he's making substantially more money. But we'll see, because the Thompson contract will be very valuable. They'll either move Thompson and get a bigger return because the contract's so valuable, or they'll trade Hill, get less of a return because of the fact that he's making more. But the guy did win a Stanley Cup as their starting goaltender just last season. So Theodore, though, on the other side of things here, $5.2 million, 1 year left on his contract. To me, it just seems like their defense is getting a little expensive. When they brought in Noah Hannafin and then signed him to a long-term deal, I'm just like, my gut feeling says that's Theodore's replacement. That just seems to be how Vegas tends to do business. And I know there's a lot of people, according to the report from Dennis Bernstein, there's some players in Vegas that are pretty unhappy with the fact that Jonathan Marchessault at this point still has not gotten any kind of traction on a contract extension. Some of them thought that should have been looked after a long time ago, considering how important he was to the team. Another phenomenal season for them. Was playoff MVP, won the Conn Smythe last year, an original Golden Misfit. They don't look at things that way. He is a bit older, into his 30s now. They're probably leery of an extension. Can he continue this kind of pace up? So I do wonder, is it likely that Marchessault's going to get signed for starters? Because if he's not, then maybe one of these guys don't get moved. But I know Marchessault recently made an appearance. I can't remember where he was at. I think it was a World of Poker or something like that. And he was asked about his contract status. And he said that he hasn't had a call yet. And he said as far as he understood that there was interest to bring him back. He definitely wants to be back. But nothing yet. And which is not that unusual. He also said, there's no free agency for like another month. So it's not like there's not time. But it just sounded like I said, the belief was, especially amongst a lot of his teammates, they're just kind of getting antsy. They want to know. They want to get this looked after, and they want to see him back. And it's just, at this point, the team's not real antsy to get things going. But right now, they only have $1.7 million, I think it is, in cap space. So they probably don't really want to go over the cap, because you can do that in the offseason by 10%. But then you're kind of stuck making moves you're kind of showing your cards to the other teams when you're trying to deal. So there's no doubt they need to free up space one way or another, regardless if it's for Marchessault or anybody else. But Theodore is definitely a prime guy to get moved. Left shot D, he's got great speed, good size, from Western Canada. He's got a good amount of experience now, Stanley Cup to his name. there's lots to like about Theodore's game. There's lots of teams out there looking for top pair D, and this guy has that capability. So they will have lots of opportunities there. And like I said, lots of teams looking for goaltending help, and Aiden Hill's got a Stanley Cup to his name, and his contract isn't that bad. So, health-wise, though, there was some issues this past year which might seem a little sketchy for teams, but, at the same time, not unusual. So Vegas, I do expect to be making some cost-cutting moves. I do expect them to continue to operate the same style they've had with the, ruthless approach for the business for them. It does not matter about relationships. So we'll see if any of those guys all get moved or what the future holds, but lots of, I think, turnover going to happen there. Of course, Trevor Zegras is another name we've been following. Talk a lot about Zegras to Montreal, and I'm not going to talk about that here today, but I noticed listening to recent comments from Frank Saravalli pleading the case on why he feels Zegras will be moved, and he made a ton of good points, and unfortunately for Zegras, there's a lot of them. This seemed more and more likely that he will get traded. Of course, last year's contract negotiation was a real grind, kept him out of camp. Pat Verbeek really grinded him hard on getting a deal done. He was one of those players the Ducks were trying to get to do off-season workouts in Florida, which apparently to have them under team control, which was not something they're allowed to do, and they did get in trouble for that. So he wasn't fond of that. His best friend, Jamie Drysdale, of course, was traded. So, obviously, I think that makes it more likely that he might be more open to move, but at the same time, doesn't mean for sure he wants to leave because of that. I'm sure he's, obviously a professional. But, the team himself and Verbeek and the management there just seems to have reservations about what kind of player he can become. And if there's more elements to his game than just, the fancy offensive game that you see. Like, yes, he's got tons of skill. But can he be a complete player? Can he be a 200-foot player? Can he play a style that they want him to be? And it just seems like they're trying to change his game, and it just, to me, doesn't bode well with all the other forwards that they've accumulated within their drafting the last few years. I just don't know that he really fits the style of play that they seem to be going for, and it does seem more and more likely with everything that's gone down in the past year that makes sense. I mean, he's obviously had a really frustrating year too, dealing with multiple injuries and missed a lot of time. So you really wonder what the future holds for Zegras, whether it's Montreal or somebody else. I do think that there's a good likelihood you're going to see teams that are going to be inquiring on his availability. It would not be the least little bit surprised if he does end up getting moved here around the time of the NHL draft. Now, the other thing that I was surprised to hear was out of Vancouver. It was from play-by-play voice Brendan Batchelor on a Sportsnet radio hit talking about the fact that he thinks the Canucks, of course, who could benefit from a little bit more salary cap space right now, that they should consider selling high on Brock Boeser. Boeser was phenomenal this year. Career season, really good in the playoffs, super important. Unfortunately for him, he ended up with a blood clotting issue near the end of it, which caused him to sit out the last game there and miss the final game against the Oilers where they lost. But can you imagine a fan base? And he said himself when he started talking, he's like, I know this is going to be not a popular thing, and I'm probably going to be a hated man in Vancouver for saying this, but he's like, I really think that if you look at the fact that he's only got another year in his contract, if he has another good year like he did this year, they might have a difficult time affording him, which 2 years ago you never would have said that. At that point, there was talks that they were trying to trade Boeser and were trying to do so without retaining too much money or adding too much of an incentive, like a sweetener. So things really turned here. Like it went from having to do that to all of a sudden, can you afford to re-sign him? Like he's, for what he did this year, his $7+ million is good value. But if he does it again next year, like he's going to be up, he can probably command $10+ million, and that's going to be challenging for them to do. No doubt. So from Batchelor's perspective, I guess maybe feels they should try to find, maybe younger, cheaper players that can come in and hopefully give you a similar result. I mean, didn't really get into where he would go or what kind of return they should look for, any of that nature. But I mean, there was even some talk earlier from other media saying that they should maybe consider moving Demko because he's battled so many injuries. After you see guys like Shelov's come in and emerged the way he had, it's like, could they take their chance of moving Demko before the injuries get any worse while he still has good value? I don't think we're at a spot there. Sheeloss was good. I don't think he was good enough, though, to dethrone Demko of that. Demko is still proven that he's a good amount better. I do think Sheeloss made himself a great case to be a full-time NHLer, though, and it can be like a 1B or a backup to him. But I would probably be a little bit cautious of moving Demko. I'd be cautious of moving Boeser for that matter as well. I do understand the concept, and sometimes I do agree that a lot of times teams do hang on to players too long. So when they're not like Vegas, because Vegas of course does things differently, but when you have a different approach and you actually have a people aspect and a relationship aspect, sometimes teams fall in love with their players too much and have it challenging on the business side of things, moving on from players before it's too late while they still have value. And if you can become a team that's like the Vegas Golden, so I know sometimes we say they're cold or cutthroat or no mercy or whatever you want to say, like they are all business and they find ways to continue to kind of reinvent the team here and bring in the latest top star to replace their other guy. It's just the way it goes. So we'll see. I personally think if Vancouver should be very, very careful if they want to consider that. I do see the concept behind what Brendan's talking about. I just don't know that they're in a position where they can afford to give up that kind of goal scoring. What would they get back from a Boeser trade that might make them better and more cap balance? I just don't know that there's a deal out there that makes perfect sense. So let me know your thoughts on the Brendan Batchelor comments around Brock Boeser. Is this something Vancouver really should consider? Where could he go? What kind of return? It seems a little bit like it's risky to me, and I probably would avoid doing it. But I do understand the concept of what could happen next year if he has another phenomenal year. But at the same time, if he really likes Vancouver, you talk to him, you're like, yes, you've had 2 really good years, but, before that, the numbers weren't as good. Can we figure out something that works for both sides to keep you here? And certainly I think he, seems to really enjoy being a Canuck and likes his teammates. And sometimes you got to give up a little bit to make that happen. But at the same time, with Boeser, I don't know where his head's at. I don't think he's really thinking about that right now. They just lost in the playoffs, and he's got a year left and had a phenomenal bounce back year after some tough times personally on and off the ice. So we'll see what happens, but let me know your thoughts on all of today's news and rumors in today's video down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.